Well, hello again, my friends and fellow Invisibles, and welcome once more to the Invisible College. And I've got an interesting but different lecture for you today. It's not a lecture, it's another talk. But I wanted to share something with you that happened yesterday, which I thought was ominous, a good omen. I'll let you make your own mind up. But anyway, before I go into that, you may remember, those of you who have been around for a while anyway, that I did a lecture quite a while ago now. It must be a couple of years, I think. I was talking about a gift that was given to me anonymously by a benefactor who I don't know who they are. You know, they haven't revealed themselves. Very kind of them, very kind. And I do appreciate it, but they gave me a gift, which was this. It's a grasshopper, a gold grasshopper, and rather beautiful little object. I think it's an antique, probably. I don't know what it was for originally. As you can see, it's a sort of bowl, and I imagine you could put oil or something in there and pour it, or use it as a measure of some sort. I don't know what it was for originally, but what's fascinating is what it is. It's a grasshopper, and that has a certain symbolism. And it took me a little while to work out why they'd sent this to me. And it all goes back to a gentleman, an English gentleman from the Elizabethan era, Elizabeth I, back in the 16th century, called Sir Thomas Gresham. And he was a courtier, and he was how should I put it? It's the banker, not exactly the banker, the trader, acting on behalf of the Queen Elizabeth I. And you may know that after the death of Henry VIII, who was the one with six wives, for those of you who don't know who I'm talking about, he was a tyrant. And he was the one who had made the break with Rome, set up the English Church as an independent entity with himself occupying, he was in charge of it. And then he had a young son who was a boy who didn't last very long, but he instituted further changes. Then there was a switchback, reversal of fortunes when Mary I, his eldest daughter, came on the throne, and she was a Catholic, and she was married to the King of Spain, Philip II. So she reversed the Protestant Reformation in England, and suddenly the Protestants found themselves being the ones being persecuted, and she did her best to re-establish Catholicism. And at one point she even imprisoned her own sister, Elizabeth, in the Tower of London, and it was touch and go whether she would have her beheaded or not, because she was a Protestant, the daughter of Anne Boleyn, who had been beheaded there. So anyway, when Mary died, Elizabeth became queen. By this time, Britain's finances were in dire straits. Henry VIII had spent a lot of money on building forts and the navy and this and that and the cloth of gold. Read about it. Anyway, so England was in a bit of a mess, and it was threatened with invasion from Philip II of Spain, who was Catholic, and of course Mary had been his wife, and he wanted England under the jurisdiction of Spain. So that's why we had the Armada. But anyway, Elizabeth had this courtier, Sir Thomas Gresham, who set about putting the situation to rights, at least financially. And you've probably heard of Gresham's Law. That's a term of expression. And Gresham's Law goes, bad money drives out good. And I had personal experience of how that works, because I was a boy in the 1950s. And at that time, I was born in 1949, only 4 years after the war, Second World War, that is. And at that time, we had most of our coins were debased. The war economy had demanded that they don't spend so much or put so much silver into the coinage. So most of the coinage was debased. It didn't have the same quantity of silver as the previous coins had had. And consequently, people used to go through their change looking for old coins, the coins of George V and early George VI, and maybe even earlier than that. And because they would be made of solid silver, sterling silver, they would be worth more than the face value of the coin. So that was good money, and it was driven out by bad. People took those coins and they hoarded them, or maybe some of them were melted down and used for other things, I don't know. But anyway, within a fairly short time, you just didn't see those coins in circulation anymore. They're gone. People had taken them. So that was an example of bad money drives out good. Now, Sir Thomas Gresham knew a thing or two about economics. He knew that if your credit rating is low, you have to pay more interest than if your credit rating is good. So he made sure that when the Queen borrowed money, and most of this was done in the Netherlands, so that was where the banking centre of Europe was at that time. And of course, Britain and the Netherlands were on good terms because they were Protestants as well. So the Protestant English used to borrow money from the bankers in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam or Rotterdam, or wherever. So Sir Thomas Gresham, who was acting on behalf of the Queen, would make sure that all loans were paid back on time and with the required interest. And that meant that the credit rating of the English monarchy was very high, and people wanted to lend money to the Queen because they knew that their money was good. So she was able to get, or he was able to get for her, very low interest rates. And that's a lesson that we all need to learn today. If you want good ratings, good credit rating for your country, you need to make sure that you meet your debts, you pay them, and you need to make sure that you're a good credit risk. And if you do that, then inflation goes down and your interest rates go down. It's when your money is inflated, when it's not worth what it was worth, either because you're no longer minting coins that are 100% silver, you're minting them only 50%, say, it's not as good. So that's bad money. And people recognize that and they start devaluing your currency. And it's the same thing that happens today. You put too much currency into circulation and it becomes of less value. And so you then find that your creditworthiness goes down. You have to pay more interest to borrow money from other people. And, the pressure is on. So I think people ought to read a little bit about what Sir Thomas Gresham had to say on that subject. But that's not what I want to talk about today. I'm not giving you a lecture in economics. It's not my field. Sir Thomas Gresham was a very interesting man who's had a very ignoble start to life. He was abandoned as a baby, so it said, in a field and left there by presumably a young mother who didn't want to, she was probably freaked out and didn't know what to do with this baby. And someone was walking past and heard the croaking of grasshoppers in the vicinity and went to see what was going on and found this baby. And, he was a rescued foundling and he was adopted by the Greshams and brought up as though he was their own son. So he adopted, when he was eventually knighted, and when you reach that pinnacle in British or English society, you have to choose your own coat of arms, and he chose as his crest the grasshopper, because the grasshoppers had looked after him and saved his life. So his crest became, or his badge became the Golden Grasshopper. And he used to use that in his arms, but he also used it in other places. He founded the Royal Exchange, which was the first kind of trading house in England for merchants to buy and sell goods and trade shares and that sort of thing in London. It's still there, the building's still there. And if you go to the City of London, you'll see it there in porticoed front, and on top of it is a golden grasshopper. He also founded what became Martin's Bank in Lombard Street, I think it is. It had been a jeweller's shop originally, but there also were lending money. I suppose he learnt this from his contacts in Amsterdam. I don't know. I suppose so. He spent a lot of time there. And there you'll see, even today, I don't know what the building's used for now, but you will see the hanging signboard outside this building with the golden grasshopper on it. But the thing he's most remembered for is Gresham College. Now, he had a big house in London at that time, the City of London, where what's called the NatWest Tower stands now. It was the tallest building in London until not very long ago. I don't think NatWest are there anymore, and I don't know who uses it now, but it's still there. It's in Gresham Street. And in that building, that was his house. And when he died, he left in his will that the house, his widow should have the house for the duration of her life. They had no children, and he left a bequest to the Corporation of London that they should turn it into a college for the people of London, a free college. And he left money in his will also to support 7 professors to teach these people the 7 liberal arts, especially things like astronomy and mathematics, which navigation, I think, which would be useful for them to become good traders and help the fortunes of the country. And also professorship of music and rhetoric. Rhetoric's important for negotiating, to know how to discuss and argue and things and to negotiate. So he had this noble vision that he could raise up what we would now call, I suppose, a new middle class to act professionally, to be, educated men and women who hadn't been wealthy, the children of the poor, to become a new middle class who could turn London into a major centre. So this was Gresham College, and it was after his wife died, sure enough, they got it going. And they appointed 7 professors. And later on, one of these was Sir Christopher Wren, who was going to rebuild London. There was also various other famous people of their time, scientists, people like Robert Boyle, who were tied in with this college. And what happened was that the people of London weren't very interested to go to these lectures, even if they were free. They were more interested in sport and going to the theatre and the bear baiting and visiting the whorehouses on the South Bank. You know what people are like. So the noble ambition of Thomas Gresham was an abject failure from that point of view. But it did something else that was very, very important. Because there were these professors on site, and they were all bachelors, they're young men. You had to be a bachelor to hold that post. Living in there, and they were paid an income, they were then free to carry out experiments of their own and to investigate natural science much more than would be possible if they were working a full-time job. So it freed them up. They only had to give one lecture a week or two lectures a week, and the rest of their time was their own. So that then spawned this whole possibility for scientists to pursue their objectives, and they started having meetings together and with other scientists from other places, particularly from Oxford, to investigate things together, and they'd write papers and they'd give lectures on their papers to those present, and then the papers would be published and mailed out to other people who are members but couldn't attend, and they might be abroad, in Germany or France or somewhere. So they had a lot of overseas members or members just couldn't come along, and that was the beginning of what was called a journal. And that was the first journal, scientific journal, that was being published and sent out. And they called this college, this grouping of these people, the Invisible College, because it didn't have premises of its own. It met in Gresham College. It also met in Wadham College in Oxford during the Civil War. And so they didn't. It wasn't a college in terms of having a building. It was a college in terms of the true meaning, which is a collegio, the group of like-minded people doing the equivalent things. And they call it invisible because it didn't have a building. So this was the origins of the first Invisible College. Now, I mentioned the Civil War. That started in 1643, and it didn't finish, I think, until 1649, I think, when the king was beheaded. And after that, we had the Cromwellian rule, and when Cromwell died, his son took over for a short time as Lord Protector, but the people weren't happy with that, and he was persuaded to retire gracefully, and they called over to Charles II to come and take the throne. He came over in 1660, and he was crowned in London. He was already King of Scotland. He became then King of England as well. And we call that the Restoration. And he was known as the Merry Monarch because during the Cromwellian period, Cromwell was a Puritan and closed all the theatres and all the pubs and everything. A very miserable time for people in England if you weren't a Puritan. So once Charles II came back, he opened them all up again, and everyone was happy, He'd go out to the theatre and so on, and he was pretty merry himself. But one of the other things he did in 1661 is he met with the people from Gresham College, and he gave them a royal charter, and he established the Royal Society of London for the Pursuit of Science. I think it's something like that, the title. But that was later shortened to just the Royal Society. So that is the origins of the Royal Society today, which is still the foremost scientific society in the world. And they still publish a journal, and they still award prizes or whatever. So to be a member or a fellow of the Royal Society is a really big deal if you're a scientist. So the Invisible College took on the mantle, as it were, of Gresham College. And Gresham College still exists today, and it uses the grasshopper as its emblem too. So when I decided to set up this Invisible College, and someone sent me this grasshopper, I decided we'd use that as our emblem because it seemed very appropriate. Now, this is why I'm talking to you now about this. Something very, very strange happened yesterday. I was downstairs with my wife and one of my sisters. We'd had lunch, and my daughter came down saying, Dad, come up quickly, there's a horrible insect. So, all right. So I went upstairs and fly swat in hand, and thinking it's going to be some bug. And there on the banisters was a little grasshopper. It was sort of brownish in colour, and golden grasshoppers are brownish in colour, usually. Now, I have no idea how that got into the house, let alone upstairs, They don't fly. I've seen grasshoppers out in the garden before, Of course, in the long grass and so on, in the summertime, but we're into October now. They should be all hibernating or dormant or whatever they do. So there was this grasshopper on the banister. So I very carefully, put a glass over it and slid a piece of card underneath so as not to hurt it. I took it outside. Panic over. But I thought about this, and the grasshopper is actually a symbol of good fortune. So, and coming, I'm the man who's got a grasshopper, golden grasshopper in his office, symbolizing his invisible cottage that he's founded. So I took this as an omen, It's a very good sign, a good symbol to have a grasshopper visit you in your house, a golden one, when you're doing this kind of work. And I take that as a sort of endorsement from the invisibles out there who are working with us in this college to put forward the inner teachings of Christianity, which is what it's all about, esoteric Christianity. Now, before I go into the next bit, I want to tell you something else, another story, also involving my daughter. Some years ago, I published this book in 1995, Magi, The Quest for a Secret Tradition. And if you haven't read it, you should. It's mostly centered on Anatolia, on what we now call Turkey. And I was investigating in eastern Turkey certain ruins that had connections to the old Magi, or the Zoroastrian priesthood, who were called Magi, the masters, who were influential, and they knew a lot about astrology, signs in the sky, that sort of thing. And I wanted to find out a bit more about them. And I was also tracing the route of Gurdjieff. And I've done various lectures on Gurdjieff and Uspensky and their teachings and how those fit in with what we're doing. And I'd also, the previous year, been involved, I was co-author with Robert Bovell. We published The Orion Mystery. And that's another book you should read if you haven't already. Have I got one here? Let me just see. Yes, I have. That's the paperback, the British paperback. It's still in print, The Orion Mystery. And you can get that from all good bookshops and even Amazon. So if you haven't read that, you really should, because it will tell you what you need to know about the pyramids. And it's available. This was the American hardback edition. I don't know what they look like now, but that was their cover, the different cover they had. Still in print, I think. Yes, I'm sure it is, actually. So you can get The Orion Mystery. Anyway, I was investigating into the teachings of Gurdjieff and looking for his connections with a secret brotherhood. Excuse me a minute. A secret brotherhood, a Christian brotherhood, he called a Samung. And when I had read works by one of his pupils called J.G. Bennett, he informed in there that one of the meanings of Samung brotherhood, or that Samun, was the Persian. So it's something Persian, and I discovered that there actually was a school of the Persians in Edessa, the city we now call Sanliurfa in Turkey. And in 449 AD, they had been cast out by the Emperor Zeno, who didn't like their teachings, regarded them as heretical. They were Nestorians, which means they were Diophysites. I'm not going to go into that now, but they were regarded as heretics. So they left Edessa and they went across the border to a town that was then called Nisibis. It's now called Nuzebin. And I believe that that's where Gurdjieff went to visit. Anyway, so I was pursuing his journeys and what he was finding. And I was also looking into the Zoroastrian connection. And my book got into the hands of the Parsis in India and the Parsi school there. And they were absolutely thrilled with what I had been writing. They wrote to me and told me, how wonderful it was and how I was spot on about how they had great interest in Orion. They told me about their archangels. They sent me some big books on Archangel Michael, who they call Michiel, and Gabriel, they call Sararosh. And they sent me some big books about that and invited me to go and visit. And I met up with a Parsi lady over here. She extended the invitation to go and visit their college. So I thought, well, why not? So this was the early days of the internet, and Expedia had started. It was very early days of Expedia. So I looked on Expedia and I found a cheap flight to get to Bombay, or Mumbai as they call it now. Mumbai, that's right, isn't it? Anyway, I got a cheap ticket flying via Italy, Milan, and then flying onwards from there. So I packed up everything, I got ready, I went off, and I had to leave very early in the morning. It was about the first flight out of Heathrow. So I camped overnight there, sleeping on a bench inside the airport, so I wouldn't miss my flight. It was pretty horrible. Anyway, I got on the flight and I went over there. And when I arrived, I discovered that you have to have a visa to get into India. And I thought, I must be really, really stupid. I hadn't even thought to check about that because I'm used to going to Egypt and Turkey and places where you just pay a little bit of money and they stamp your passport and that's it, They're welcome, come and spend your money. Yeah, welcome. I wasn't expecting to be told, no, you can't come in. Well, I've got money, I'm not going to be a drain on the pocket. I'm going to be putting money into your account. No. And of course, I hadn't reckoned that, of course, India had been the jewel of the crown of the British Empire, and there's still, with certain Indians, not all, but certain, and this is a particularly old man who was in charge of this, they have, a sense of payback for the British for the Raj. And also because we have quite strict rules about them coming into Britain, mainly because, there's 1 billion Indians and at least 100 million of them would love to come and live in England, and we'd be totally overwhelmed. So we do have, some sort of checks, there is a very large Indian community in Britain now, but that's why we have those restrictions, or we certainly did. But they're tit for tat. I don't blame them. It's their country; they make their own laws. They do what they have to. Anyway, the long and the short of it, I have a taxi driver waiting for me the other side. I saw him and waved to him, and I couldn't go past the barrier. They put me on the next flight back. So I found myself back in Milan airport, and I had some hours to kill before I could take a flight back to England. So I went into their shop and looked for something to bring back as a present for my daughter, who was quite young at that time, and I found this little Pinocchio that actually supports, you can put a picture on there, which I thought was rather nice. And you have a Pinocchio, and there he is with his long nose, you can see him, and it's a nice little doll, and I thought she'd like that. So I bought that back. But of course, when I think about it, Pinocchio, the story of Pinocchio is really, it's a morality tale. It's the story of us. We are the wooden boy. We're the ones who have to learn how to be a human, how to be better than a doll, to develop ourselves, develop our intelligence, to wake up and become a true living son of the Father. His father is Jupiter, who is like Jupiter, the man, the toy maker who makes the dolls. Well, that's like God the Father, isn't it? And of course, Pinocchio goes off the rails, doesn't he? He falls in with bad company, Mr. Fox, and they teach him bad ways, and he starts telling lies, and his nose gets longer every time he tells a lie. So he's going down the wrong way. And then doesn't that happen to us when we're young? It certainly happened to me when I was young. You do the wrong things, you make mistakes, you misbehave, whatever. You make bad choices. And some people go totally off the rails and their lives are totally ruined. But for Pinocchio, he has a guardian angel, or he has a little spirit who comes as his conscience to wake him up. And what is he? He's called Jiminy Cricket, who is a kind of grasshopper. So the grasshopper also symbolizes that intelligence, that inner knowing, that spirit guide, you could say, who awakens the conscience and awakens to our true potential, that we shouldn't be behaving so badly, we should be doing the right thing. And in a way, I thought that was my lesson from going to India, was to realize that I don't need to go to India. I doubt I'll ever go there again. I have no interest to go there now. I've lost all interest in going there. I think the people who I would have met, there was a man over 100 at the time. He must be long dead now. So I've got no interest to go there anymore. But what it has taught me is to trust my intuition and to trust the little cricket who's going to help me to do the right things. And I do, and I am led, and I am taught things, and things come into my head. You wouldn't believe how much of what I teach you now comes to me as inspiration. And I see how things fit together in ways I hadn't seen before. And that's what true esotericism is. It's not some difficult, complicated code, you've got to find out how to interpret the code. It's not like that. It's under your nose most of the time, under Pinocchio's nose. It's just that you're not seeing it because you're not looking at it the right way. And once you do look at things and you put things together like a big jigsaw puzzle, the bigger picture emerges. And that's what I've been doing with the Invisible College. Now, I'm doing these open lectures for everyone, and you're all welcome to come along. That's like the Gresham College, open doors, come in, all you people of London, come and have a free lecture. If you prefer to go to the cinema, you prefer to go to the bear baiting, the pub, watch the football, that's fine, that's your choice, yeah? But anyway, those are the free lectures. But the esoteric lectures that I'm doing are for the college, people who would be willing to actually join the college. Make that little step, make that little commitment. And the commitment is not huge, it's only £5 a month to join the college. There are other levels as well, but £5 a month gets you in to see most of the lectures, you get newsletters, you get connection. But the reason I've set it up, and I'm charging £5 a month, is if I don't charge anything, familiarity breeds contempt. And so I do require people to actually make some kind of contribution to it themselves. And it's not a lot, but it is something. And it makes all the difference in attitude, and that's terribly important. So if you want to join the college, it's on patreon.com, and the page is Adrian G. Gilbert. So patreon.com//Adrian G. Gilbert should take you straight there. Otherwise, go to patreon.com, do a search, and you'll find my page. And all the details are there. Meanwhile, if you like this lecture and you thought it was fun, please give it a like. That will help get it up the charts a little bit. We don't get much help from the YouTube. We haven't got a huge following. So you can also follow the channel, that helps. Help us get up the ratings a little bit and get more people to get that in recommendations. So thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to talking to you again. Bye-bye.